Do you know what you want to say in English, but you're not sure if it sounds polite? Saying please and thank you is a good place to start, but there are other ways that you can sound polite. And today I'm going to share with you 5 ways you can make a lot of sentences sound more polite. Welcome to English Coach 3Ts. I'm Tanya. After I've shared these 5 ways with you, I'm going to give you some sentences you can practice on. So let's get started with number 1. Number 1 is to make it into a question. Take a statement, for example, give me that book. Just by making it into a question, it sounds more polite. Would you give me that book? Sounds a lot more polite. And of course, if you add the word please, it sounds even more polite. Let's leave at 7:30 is very direct. If you want to make it sound more polite, you can say something like, how about we leave at 7:30? Or why don't we leave at 7:30? The second thing you can do is to make it more general. When you say something like, we will meet at 3:30 p.m. tomorrow, again, it's very direct. If you make it a little more general, it sounds more polite. For example, you could say, let's meet at about 3:30 tomorrow. Other words you could use are approximately or more or less. Approximately 3:30 tomorrow or more or less 3:30 tomorrow. Give it a try with this sentence. Put it in the report right here. Can you make this a little more general so it sounds a little more polite? You could say something like, put it in the report more or less right here. This sounds softer and it's probably going to end up in the same place. Give it a try with this statement. We need 10 bottles of water. You could make this a little more general by saying, we need more or less 10 bottles of water. And let's use this example for the third way to make it sound more polite. The third thing you can do is to tell the other person why you need what you need or why you're asking for whatever you're asking for. So when we look at the example with the bottles of water, we could say something like, I think we're going to need more or less 10 bottles of water because I think we'll have 8 to 10 people here. This way you're making it more general and you're telling them why. It makes them feel like they're a part of the decision. Going back to our example with the book, if you said something like, could you give me that book? I need something to write on. The other person isn't going to hesitate to hand you the book because they understand why and they're happy to help. Number 4 is to switch from the present tense to the past tense. Instead of saying, do you want some water? Try saying, did you want some water? So we went from the present tense, do you want some water? To the past tense, did you want some water? Neither of these questions are impolite, but using the past tense makes it even more polite. See if you can think of the past tense for this one. Do you want to go with us? Can you make this into the past tense? You could say, did you want to go with us? It's funny how this works, but especially for Americans, this just sounds a little more polite and it's a softer way to ask the question. Number 5 is to use one of these words to make the sentence a little softer. The words are would, could, shall, and sometimes the word should. Let me tell you what I mean. So using the word would with our example about the report, we could say something like, I think it would be good if we put it about here in the report. I made it general by saying about here, and I used the word would by saying, I think it would be good. Instead of saying, it has to be like this, I'm saying, I think it would be good. I'm still expressing my opinion, but I'm not being so direct. I used the word could when I changed the direct sentence, give me that book, to could you give me that book? And you can use the word shall by saying something like, shall we leave at 3:30? It makes it a question and includes the other person. So what did I mean about the word should and that you can sometimes use it? If you use the word should as a question, then it sounds more polite. As an example, it's very similar to shall we leave at 3:30? We could also say, should we leave at 3:30? But if we use it as a direction, then we don't like this word as much. For example, if we say we should leave at 3:30, this is more direct, especially if you tell someone what they should be doing. For example, you should do it a different way. This isn't going to go over well with your average English speaker. Avoid using this word as a way to direct people. Instead, use it as a way to ask questions to include them in decisions. Try using one of these words, would, could, should, or shall, with the statement, pass the salt and pepper. What would you say to make it sound more polite? You could say, could you pass the salt and pepper? Or you could say, would you pass the salt and pepper? These two have a slight difference. Would you pass it is talking about, are you willing to pass it? Could you pass it is more like, are you able to pass it? If you want to play it safe in this kind of question, you could stick with the word would. Almost everyone agrees that this is a polite way to ask a question. If learning tips and tricks like these are helpful for you, be sure to give us a thumbs up and subscribe. It really does help us to help more people. At the beginning of this video, I said I would give you a chance to practice what you've learned today. Practicing is going to help you to remember all of the things you learned. So here are 4 sentences you can practice on, and then I'll give you a bonus tip. Sentence number 1. Let's go to that restaurant. Can you make this more polite? Put your answer in the comments below. Number 2, get it for me by tomorrow. Number 3, send this by email. And number 4, we will leave at 5 p.m. If you aren't sure how to make one of these statements sound more polite, check out what people say in the comments or ask me a question there. The bonus tip I have for you is going to help you remember these things you've learned today and use them when you're speaking English. The tip is to start listening for these whenever you're watching a television show, you're listening to a podcast, or watching a movie. When you hear these and make a note of it, you're going to start remembering them and they're going to be natural for you. Being polite in English is important if you want to start making connections with people and practice English conversation. If you'd like to see another of our videos on this topic, check this one out. Or YouTube has already picked this one for you. See you there.